Two adult men laughed at a young woman who was attempting to work out. The gym was full, yet no one spoke up until Terrence stood up, compelling everyone to stop pretending they didn't see. The familiar smell of sweat and rubber lingered in the air. Dumbbells clanked and treadmills hummed, while a few early risers grunted through their sets, fully absorbed with their headphones. It was just past 7 a.m. at Ironworks Fitness in Knoxville, Tennessee. For most people, it was just another regular Tuesday. However, for Terrence Roy, it was leg day, a day he deemed sacred. He was nearly finished wiping down the leg press when he noticed her. She appeared to be no older than 25, tall with an athletic build and her hair tied up. She looked slightly out of place, like it was her first week at that gym, hovering near the squat rack, clearly trying to figure out how to adjust the bar. Nothing was unusual about that. Everyone starts somewhere. But then he noticed something else. Two guys, possibly in their mid to late 30s, both white and decked out in compression shirts they didn't need, exuded an unwarranted confidence. They weren't working out or even acting like they were. They just leaned against the preacher curl bench watching her. At first it was subtle, some whispers and a bit of snickering. But then one of them called out loud enough for half the gym to hear, "Hey, sweetheart, that bar's heavier than you. You sure you don't need help?" The other one laughed sharply, mocking. She probably saw it on TikTok and thought she could just waltz in and lift like a pro. Terrence stood there, towel still in hand, feeling the tension rise in his body. He recognized that tone, sarcastic, mixed with something uglier, a blend of mockery and entitlement that makes a person feel small without the need for fists. The woman didn't respond, but kept working on the bar, her eyes focused forward, although her hands trembled slightly. She took a deep breath, as if trying to stifle something. Terrence scanned the room. There were maybe 15 people present, and he could tell some had heard it. A man in a red hoodie looked down at his phone, feigning ignorance, and a woman by the ellipticals shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Nobody moved. Nobody said a word. Terrence took a seat on a nearby bench, watching a bit longer, and then it hit him. It wasn't just about those two fools and their foolish remarks. It was about everyone else, including himself, watching it happen without intervening. This wasn't the first time something like this had occurred in a place like this, but it was perhaps the first time he felt he couldn't ignore it. Slowly, he stood up, grabbed his water bottle, and made his way over. "Hey," he said, his voice steady but firm. The two guys turned around. One smirked. "You talking to us?" asked the taller one, raising an eyebrow. Terrence nodded. "Yeah, you think it's funny harassing someone while she's trying to train?" The shorter one shrugged. "Relax, man, we were just joking." Terrence turned slightly toward the woman. "Did you?" he asked her. She quietly shook her head. Now a few heads turned in their direction. A guy taking a break between sets looked up, and one of the staff members behind the counter leaned forward, tuning in. The taller guy crossed his arms. "You her dad or something?" "No," Terrence replied. "Just someone who's tired of people thinking this kind of behavior is okay." There was a pause, heavy and charged, but he didn't back down. "Look, man," the shorter one said, suddenly less cocky, "we didn't mean anything by it." "Yeah," Terrence replied. "That's the problem." But the room still hadn't reacted, and Terrence sensed there was more lurking beneath the surface, a peculiar kind of silence that occurs when people pretend not to hear something they've clearly heard. It felt like the whole room was holding its breath, waiting to see how far it would go before someone was compelled to actually care. That's what it felt like at Ironworks. Neither Terrence nor the two men moved. The taller one, whose name according to his bright blue gym badge was Kyle, retained that tight smirk, as if waiting for the punchline to come. But now, his arms were crossed in front of his chest, his confidence waning. The shorter guy, Bryce, had stepped back, looking uncertain. Terrence wasn't there to fight. He didn't need to. His presence alone was loud enough for someone like him, 40 years old, with 2 kids and 2 decades of navigating uncomfortable spaces. He learned that sometimes just standing still could be the most powerful thing you could do. He also observed that nobody was stepping in. Some people glanced up briefly before looking down again, like they had toggled onto the wrong channel and wished to change it. Others looked uncomfortable, as if hoping he would just let it go and move on. It frustrated him, not because he expected support, but because he realized how easy it was for people to vanish behind their earbuds or screens when things got complicated. One guy, probably in his mid-50s, sat on a bench pressing dumbbells, shaking his head, not at Kyle or Bryce, but at Terrence, as if he were the issue, believing that speaking up was more offensive than the trash being said in the first place. The young woman, who had been quiet, now sat at the edge of the squat rack platform, tying her shoe, even though it was already tied, anything to keep busy and avoid eye contact. She didn't want to be part of this moment, but she already was. Terrence took a slow breath. He turned slightly so his voice could carry. "You all heard what they said, and you saw how she reacted," he said, not shouting, just loud enough for the room to hear. "If someone spoke to your sister, your daughter, your friend like that, would you still stay quiet? Would you still say nothing?" Kyle opened his mouth, as if he had something slick to say, but nothing came out, just a tight jaw and narrowed eyes. Bryce shifted again. "Look, man, nobody's trying to start something here." Terrence nodded, "Then maybe don't." Behind the front desk, the gym manager, mid-30s, with a blonde ponytail and a name tag reading Lauren, finally approached. She wasn't rushing, but she was clearly uneasy, likely worried about complaints, trying to gauge the temperature of the room before picking a side. "Is everything okay here?" she asked, her eyes flickering between the men. Terrence responded, "Just clearing something up." Kyle piped up, "This dude thinks he can tell us what to say to people now." Lauren looked at him, then at the woman still crouched near the barbell. She got it, maybe not immediately, but just enough. "Well," she said carefully, "we don't allow harassment here, so if someone feels disrespected, that's something we need to take seriously." Bryce scoffed, "Harassment? We said one thing." "One thing was enough." Terrence interjected. There was another pause. Slowly, Lauren turned to the young woman. "Are you okay?" she asked. The woman stood, quiet but steady. "I just came to work out," she said. "That's all." Lauren nodded, understanding. "You're welcome here. If anyone gives you a problem again, let us know." That was it. The tension didn't break with a big moment. There was no fight, no dramatic scene, no applause, but something had shifted. Bryce and Kyle exchanged glances, then without another word, walked off toward the locker room, muttering under their breaths. Nobody stopped them, nobody needed to. Terrence turned and caught the woman's eye. She gave him the smallest nod, just enough to say thank you, without uttering the words. What resonated with him more than the confrontation was the silence, the looks, and how everyone else made themselves small in that moment. He kept wondering what would have happened if he hadn't been there, but the day wasn't over yet, and the story was unfolding. Terrence was halfway through filling his water bottle at the fountain when he heard a voice behind him. "You feel like a hero now." Huh? He didn't turn around immediately. He recognized that voice. Kyle, the same mocking tone from earlier, stripped of an audience, sounded smaller and more personal. Terrence calmly twisted the cap back onto his bottle before facing him. Kyle stood there alone, arms slack, an edge to his expression replaced by something resembling bruised ego, maybe embarrassment, or just the frustration of not getting the last word. "I'm not here to be a hero," Terrence stated. "I'm here to work out, just like everyone else." Kyle took a step closer. "You made a big deal out of nothing. She didn't even say anything. You jumped in like she needed saving." Terrence leaned slightly against the wall, still calm. "She didn't need saving, but she certainly didn't deserve to be mocked either. You made her uncomfortable on purpose." Kyle scoffed. "Oh, so now you're the feelings police." Terrence tilted his head. "Nah, just a grown man, tired of seeing people act like clowns in public." Kyle's jaw tensed. "You don't know me, and you don't know her." Terrence replied, but that didn't stop you from talking. There was a moment, a real one, where Kyle just stood there blinking, as if part of him wasn't accustomed to anyone pushing back without yelling or swinging. Just facts, just a mirror to hold up to him. Then Kyle looked around. The hallway outside the locker rooms was quiet, just the two of them, and the low hum of a treadmill nearby. You people always gotta make it racial, he muttered. Terrence felt that shift, that tired line meant to flip the blame, meant to derail. He kept his voice steady. You brought race into it. When you thought she was an easy target, you figured no one would say anything. That's not on me. Kyle didn't respond. I've been in places like this all my life, Terrence continued. I know when something's just a joke, and when something's about putting someone in their place. Still silence. Then Kyle let out a taut breath, and muttered, whatever man, before turning toward the locker room. Terrence watched him walk away, and shook his head slightly, not in anger, not in victory, just clarity. He didn't seek humiliation. He didn't need a public win. What mattered was that someone heard him, that Kyle, whether he wanted to admit it or not, felt it. Just then, a voice came from behind him, softer this time. Hey! It was the young woman who had changed her shirt and pulled her hoodie halfway over her head. Thank you, she said, her voice almost a whisper, for saying something. Terrence smiled slightly. You're welcome, she added. I didn't know what to do. I just froze. That's okay, he replied. You don't owe anyone a reaction. That's the thing nobody tells you. Sometimes just making it through moments like that is enough. She nodded. I'm Janelle. Terrence introduced himself, and they shook hands. Do you come here often? She asked, almost laughing at how cliché it sounded. 3 times a week, he replied. Early, before work. She smiled. Guess I'll start coming early too. With that, she headed toward the exit. No tears, no big emotional scene, just a moment of grace between two strangers who now shared something. Yet while that chapter closed, another ripple began outside those gym walls. By the time Terrence returned home that evening, the kids were already halfway through dinner, and his wife, Sonia, balanced a laptop on one knee while coaching their youngest through spelling homework. The usual weekday chaos grounded him, reminding him that real life doesn't pause just because something heavy happened a few hours earlier. However, the weight followed him through the door. He tried to leave it at the gym, tried to let it fade behind the steering wheel, but those moments don't always stay where they occur. They hitch a ride with you. How was the gym? Sonia asked without looking up, scooping mashed potatoes onto a plate for their son Caleb. Terrence hesitated. Weird, actually. That caught her attention. She looked up, eyebrows raised, and he relayed everything, not dramatized, not exaggerated, just the facts. What Kyle and Bryce said, how no one intervened, how he finally did, Janelle's reaction, the awkwardness, the silence. Sonia listened, chewing slowly, her eyes focused. When he finished, she leaned back and exhaled through her nose. Sounds like the usual, she said, not dismissively, just tiredly, a familiar exhaustion. I know, Terrence said. But something about today stuck. You mean the fact you were the only one who said anything? She queried. Yeah, that, and he paused. I saw how many people heard it, and still said nothing, because that's how it goes. They stay out of it, she noted, getting up to rinse a plate. They don't want the awkwardness. They're afraid to say something and get involved, or worse, they think it's none of their business. He nodded slowly. It shouldn't be normal. It shouldn't, she agreed. But it is. Later that night, once the kids were tucked in and the house quieted, Terrence scrolled through his phone. Notifications lit up from a local Facebook group he followed, Knoxville Fit Life Community. Someone had posted about the incident. Saw something wild at Ironworks today. Some dude stood up to a couple of guys who were clowning on a new girl at the squat rack. Didn't get violent or anything, just called them out. Respect. It had over 100 comments already. Some people praised the guy. Others asked what happened. A few took the usual route. You don't know the full story. People are too sensitive these days. Can't take a joke anymore. Terrence didn't comment. He just watched the conversation grow. Someone even uploaded a short clip, a shaky 3-second phone video of him standing in front of Kyle and Bryce, his back to the camera, no audio, just a still shot of a man refusing to budge. He wasn't comfortable being the center of it, not out of embarrassment, but because it took away from the point. This wasn't meant to be about him. It aimed to highlight how easily garbage behavior slips by when no one speaks up. The next morning, things felt different at the gym. Janelle was there again, giving him a fist bump this time, grinning like they had been gym buddies for years. Others were watching, not in a bad way, just observing. A couple of people nodded at him, not the performative kind, but like they had been contemplating it too. Lauren, the gym manager, approached quietly after he finished a set. "Hey," she said, "thanks again for yesterday." He looked at her. "We've had issues before," she continued. "People saying things they think are harmless. This time people are talking about it. Maybe it changes something," he said. Just as he grabbed his towel, a man in his mid-60s, wiry with gray in his beard, approached him at the dumbbell rack. "I was here yesterday," he said. Terrence raised an eyebrow. "Yeah?" The man nodded. "Didn't say anything, should have. I've got 2 granddaughters. I keep thinking if that were one of them, I'd want someone like you nearby." Terrence didn't respond right away. "I appreciate that," he finally said. The man gave a half smile. "Name's Roland. If you ever need a spot, I'm around." But what Terrence didn't expect was who would walk through the doors next, or what he had to say. He wasn't anticipating anyone specific when the gym doors opened that Friday afternoon, but there stood Bryce. No Kyle, no swagger, no smirk, just a man with headphones around his neck and something in his eyes that wasn't there before. Terrence spotted him as soon as he walked in, unsure if Bryce would ignore him, stir up trouble again, or act as if the previous confrontation hadn't happened. But Bryce didn't pretend. Instead, he walked right up to Terrence after he finished his warm-up set on the lat pull-down. "Hey," he began, his voice softer than before. "You got a minute?" Terrence didn't respond immediately, keeping his hand on the machine's handle as he searched Bryce's face for any hint of sarcasm. There was none. "All right," Terrence finally said. "Go ahead." Bryce shifted his weight from foot to foot. "I talked to Kyle," he started. "He thinks you embarrassed us on purpose." Still upset. "But me? I've been thinking." Terrence said nothing. "I've got 2 boys," Bryce continued. 10 and 8. They were at the park the other day, and I saw this older kid giving them a hard time, nothing major, just pushing their buttons, and I realized I whiffed. I didn't know what to say. I just watched." He paused. "And I remembered how I didn't say anything here either when we were messing with that girl. I mean, we were messing with her. There's no other way to put it." Terrence watched him, waiting. "So now what?" "I just wanted to say you were right," Bryce said, his eyes steady. "I don't want to be that guy, not for my kids to see, not for myself." Terrence leaned back slightly. "It's not about being right. It's about knowing when to stop being the person you'd never want to run into." Bryce nodded. "Yeah." They stood there in silence for a moment, just 2 men in gym clothes, under fluorescent lights, talking as if it mattered. "I'm not going to apologize for Kyle," Bryce added. "He's got his own stuff to figure out, but I do apologize for what I said, for how I acted." Terrence extended his hand. "I accept that." They shook on it. Firm, brief, real. Later that evening, Terrence sat outside on the porch with his daughter Elise, who had just turned 14 and recently developed an interest in running. She asked him what happened at the gym, having heard her mom mention something in passing. He hesitated. then kept it simple, without sugarcoating it. The words, the silence, the confrontation, and the apology. He observed how her expression changed with each beat of the story. "So you just talked to them?" she asked, her eyebrows raised. "Yeah," he replied. "I didn't yell, didn't make a scene. I just asked them why they thought that kind of behavior was okay. And that worked. It didn't change them right away," he admitted, "but maybe it made them think twice. That's how most change starts." Elise looked down at her sneakers, twisting the laces in her fingers. "I don't know if I'd be brave enough to say something like that," she murmured. Terrence smiled. "That's the thing, you don't feel brave when you do it, you just feel like someone has to." She looked up at him, her eyes soft but now full of something else, maybe pride. "I'll try," she said quietly. "You don't have to try," he replied. "Just pay attention. When something seems off, don't ignore it. Speak up if you can, or be there for someone who can't." They sat in silence for a while after that, no rush to fill the air, the kind of silence that feels full instead of empty. But Monday was approaching, and someone unexpected still had something to convey before this story felt complete. Monday morning commenced like any other. Terrence parked in his usual spot, swiped his gym card at the front desk, and walked toward the free weights. He didn't expect anything new, just a typical start to the week, until he saw Roland, the older guy who had offered a few words days earlier, waiting by the dumbbell rack, stretching out his shoulders as if preparing for a long set. However, he wasn't in workout gear. He wore jeans, boots, and a dark jacket zipped halfway. Not here to train, he was waiting. "Got a minute?" Roland asked, as Terrence approached. He nodded, "Yeah," and they walked toward the small lounge area by the vending machines. The gym was quiet, and nobody paid them much attention. Roland rubbed his hands together, as if uncertain where to start. "I've been thinking about what happened," he finally stated. "What you did, what you said." Terrence didn't interrupt. Roland continued, "I'm 66. I've seen a lot of garbage in my time. I grew up in Ohio in the 60s. My old man ran a tire shop. We weren't rich but we got by. I remember when the schools integrated. I recall the tension, but we never talked about it at home." He paused. "And because we never talked about it, I didn't know how to act when something happened. I'd see stuff at work or out in town, and I'd tell myself, that's not my problem. I thought silence was neutrality, but it never was." Terrence listened, not uttering a word. Roland's voice dropped slightly. "The day you said something to those guys, I was right there. I was 2 benches over. I heard every word." Terrence nodded slowly, having figured as much. "I wanted to say something. I really did, but my mouth just didn't open. I sat there like a damn statue." He shook his head. "I've been kicking myself ever since." Terrence leaned forward. "You're here now. That counts for something." Roland exhaled. "I've got grandkids. 2 girls and 1 boy. The girls are mixed. My daughter married a black man, a good guy who teaches 6th grade. I keep thinking about them. If they were in that gym, if someone talked to them like that, I'd want a Terrence around, someone who didn't stay quiet." The room felt heavier now, not in a bad way, just fuller. "I've said things in the past I'm not proud of," Roland confessed. "Let things slide that I shouldn't have, but I'm trying to do better. That's why I came today, to say thank you, and to let you know I'll speak up next time. No more sitting on my hands." Terrence finally smiled. "That means more than you probably think." They shook hands again. This one felt different, not a thank you handshake, but a "we see each other now" handshake. "I might even start working out again," Roland added with a chuckle. Terrence grinned. "Start with light weights, don't go breaking something." They laughed, and the tension in the air finally eased. After Roland left, Terrence stood by the mirror wall, towel draped over his shoulder, and watched the room for a moment. Same gym, same walls, but it felt changed, not because everyone miraculously improved overnight, or because racism vanished, but because something small had shifted. One person spoke, another listened, a third changed their mind. It wasn't everything, but it was something, and sometimes, that's all it takes to move forward. Yet even with that, the real lesson didn't dawn on him, until he saw what his daughter posted later that night. It was around 9:30, when Terrence finally sat on the edge of his bed, shoes kicked off, lights dimmed, the soft hum of the hallway fan in the background. Sonia was reading, legs curled under the blanket, her glasses sliding down her nose. He picked up his phone to check messages before bed, and that's when he saw it, a new post from Elise. He clicked on it. It was a selfie, nothing special, her hair pulled back, no filter, sporting her school hoodie, but it was the caption that stopped him. My dad stood up for a stranger this week. He didn't yell, he didn't throw hands, he just spoke up, and that was enough to make people think, including me. I used to believe keeping quiet made you neutral, but I was wrong. Silence has a side. I hope I'm brave like him when it matters. Terrence blinked at the screen, not out of shock, but because her words sounded so sure, so clear, and they came from her. His teenage daughter, the one who used to get nervous asking the server for ketchup, the one who once cried when she had to read a poem in class, now she was putting words like these out into the world. He glanced over at Sonia, and showed her the phone. She read it in silence, then smiled without looking up. You realize she's watching everything you do, right? Terrence exhaled. I'm just trying to get through the week most of the time. Well, she said, placing the phone on the nightstand. You're doing better than that. He lay back, staring at the ceiling, letting the moment settle, everything that had transpired in the last few days. Kyle, Bryce, Janelle, Roland, and Elise. It had all started with one choice, not a big one, not a dramatic one, just the decision to say something instead of nothing. That's what remained with him the most. People always believe you must be fearless to take a stand, but that isn't the case. Most of the time, you're scared, unsure, not wanting to be the one to make things uncomfortable. Yet if you stay silent, someone else pays the price. He recalled Janelle's expression when she said she froze, the way Roland rubbed his hands together when he admitted he didn't know how to act, and Bryce trying to find the words to apologize without sounding weak. This is how it starts, not with grand speeches or internet outrage, but in real places with real people who choose to do the slightly harder thing. The next morning, Terrence sat in his car in the gym parking lot for a moment before heading in, not to hype himself up, just to think. Then he pulled out his phone and typed something, not meant to go viral or garner likes, just a truth he felt compelled to share. You don't need a big moment to make a difference. Just don't look away when something's wrong. Say something, even if your voice shakes, even if you're alone. That's how things begin to change. He hit post, then stepped out of the car. Another Monday, another workout, but with a little more weight off his shoulders than before. If you're watching this and thinking, I've been in a moment like that, you're not alone. And if you froze before, don't beat yourself up. You'll get another chance. The real question is, next time, what will you do? Speak up, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's small, because silence may protect your comfort, but it won't safeguard someone else's dignity, and someone near you might be waiting for a voice like yours. If this story resonated with you, share it, leave a comment, and remember to subscribe, because we need more narratives about what doing the right thing truly looks like.